The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nebraska Territory plains when Catherine Harper realized her family was going to die out here. The wagon wheel had cracked 3 days ago, splintering like her hopes as the rest of the wagon train disappeared into dust clouds on the horizon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 8 children huddled beneath the torn canvas cover, their faces hollow with hunger and fear, while she stood beside their broken-down wagon wondering how a mother's love could possibly be enough to carry them through the endless grass sea that stretched to every horizon. The wheels of Kate Harper's covered wagon had been singing a steady rhythm for 6 weeks across the Missouri plains, but now they had fallen silent. She pressed her weathered palm against the cracked spoke, feeling the rough wood give slightly. Under pressure. 3 days since the main wagon train had vanished beyond the rolling hills. 3 days since Captain Morrison had declared her family too much of a burden to wait for repairs. The morning air carried the scent of wild sage and distant rain, but no trace of smoke from other travelers' fires. Behind her in the wagon bed, 8 children shifted restlessly under the patched canvas. Mary, her eldest at 15, held baby William against her shoulder while he fretted with fever. The twins, Samuel and Anna, pressed their faces against the wagon sides, searching the horizon with eyes too old for their 12-year-old faces. Lucy sat braiding grass stems with nervous fingers, her 10-year-old mind trying to stay busy while fear crept in. James, 8 years old and stubborn as his father had been, kept insisting he could fix the wheel himself if only Mama would let him try. Ruth, barely 6, had stopped asking when they would reach the settlement days ago. Benjamin, her youngest boy at 4, clung to a wooden horse his father had carved, the paint worn smooth by small fingers. Kate closed her eyes and let herself remember Thomas for just a moment. Her husband's voice seemed to echo across the grassland, promising her that Colorado Territory would give them the fresh start they needed. Rich soil for farming, clean air for the children, a chance to build something lasting. He had been so certain, so full of plans and hope. The fever that took him in independence had stolen more than just a husband. It had left her alone with 8 mouths to feed and a dream that felt more like a burden with each passing mile. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart pound. She reached for the rifle Thomas had taught her to use, checking that it was loaded while keeping her movements slow and steady. The children fell silent behind her, sensing danger in the way only children could. Through the shimmering heat waves, she could make out riders approaching from the northwest. Not the familiar silhouettes of cavalry or fellow settlers, but something that made her mouth go dry with recognition. Indians. 5 riders approached at an easy pace, their horses stepping carefully through the tall grass. The lead rider sat straight and composed, his long black hair decorated with feathers that caught the morning light. War paint marked his cheekbones in bold strokes of red and white. Behind him, 4 younger braves followed, their faces serious, but not hostile. Kate had heard enough stories around wagon train campfires to know that this could go either way. Some tribes helped stranded travelers, others did not. The lead rider raised his hand in what appeared to be a peaceful gesture, speaking words in a language she did not understand. His voice was deep and measured, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Kate kept the rifle ready, but pointed it toward the ground, hoping to show she was not looking for a fight, but would defend her children if necessary. From the wagon behind her, Mary's voice whispered urgent and frightened. "Mama, what do they want?" Kate did not take her eyes off the riders. "Hush now, children. Stay calm and quiet." The leader dismounted from his horse with fluid grace, his moccasins making no sound as he approached. He was older than she had first thought, perhaps 50 years with silver threading through his black hair. His face was lined with years of sun and wind, but his dark eyes held intelligence and something that surprised her: kindness. He spoke again, this time mixing English words with his native tongue. "Woman with many children, where are your people?" Kate found her voice, though it came out rougher than she intended. "Gone on ahead, our wagon broke down." The Indian chief nodded slowly, his gaze taking in the cracked wheel, the thin faces. Peering out from the canvas, the careful way she held her rifle. He spoke to his companions in their own language, and one of the younger men dismounted as well. This one was perhaps 25, with the same intelligent eyes as the chief but a gentler expression. "My father, Chief Running Bear, says you are in great danger here," the younger man said in careful English. "The Crow war party passed through 2 days ago. They will return this way soon." Kate felt her heart sink even further. She had heard enough about Crow raiders to know what that meant for a lone woman with children. "We have no choice but to try to reach the settlement. Our supplies won't last much longer." Chief Running Bear spoke again, and his son translated. "He says the settlement is 4 days' travel for a healthy wagon. Your wheel will not hold that long, and the Crow will find you before you reach safety." The chief walked slowly around their wagon, examining the broken wheel and the worn canvas cover. He peered inside at the children, who huddled together like frightened rabbits. Baby William chose that moment to let out a weak cry, and Ruth began to sniffle with exhaustion and fear. The chief's expression softened as he looked at them. When he spoke again, his son's translation surprised Kate completely. "My father says you remind him of his sister, who died in the winter sickness many years ago. She had children too. He could not save her, but perhaps he can help you." Kate stared at the chief, searching his weathered face for any sign of deception. All her life, she had been taught to fear Indians, to see them as savage enemies who would murder her family without thought. But the man standing before her looked at her children with the same protective concern she had seen in Thomas's eyes. "What kind of help?" she asked carefully. Chief Running Bear spoke at length, gesturing toward the northwest. His son listened intently before translating. "He offers to escort you to the settlement. Our village is 1 day's travel in that direction. We have materials to properly repair your wagon, food for your children. You can rest there safely while we prepare for the journey." Kate felt a flicker of hope, but suspicion warred with desperation in her chest. "And what would you want in return?" The young interpreter smiled for the first time. "My father says a mother's gratitude is payment enough. He has grandchildren of his own. He would want someone to help them if they were lost and alone." From inside the wagon, Mary's voice came out small and uncertain. "Mama, baby William is getting worse. His fever is burning him up." Kate looked at her eldest daughter, seeing the fear and exhaustion in her young face. She thought of Thomas, of the promises they had made to give their children a better life. She thought of the long days and longer nights stretching ahead if they tried to make it alone across the hostile territory. She thought of the Crow war party that might find them before they reached safety. Then she looked at Chief Running Bear, this man who could have simply ridden past their broken wagon without a second thought. Instead, he had stopped. He had offered help when she had none. His eyes held the steady gaze of a man who meant what he said. Kate Harper had always been a practical woman. Thomas had loved that about her, the way she could see through sentiment to what needed doing. Right now, what needed doing was keeping her children alive. Everything else was luxury she could not afford. She lowered the rifle completely and met the chief's eyes. "We accept your help with gratitude." Chief Running Bear nodded once, then turned to his men and spoke rapidly in their own language. Immediately, they began examining the wagon more closely, testing the remaining wheels and checking the harness. The chief's son approached Kate with something that looked like respect in his expression. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "I am Daniel Crowfeather," he said. My father's English is better than he admits, but he prefers to let me speak for him when dealing with white settlers. He says to tell you that your children will be safe in our village. Our medicine woman can help the sick baby, and we will make sure you reach the settlement with supplies enough to start your new life." Kate felt something inside her chest ease for the first time in days. Not all the fear, not all the uncertainty, but enough to let her breathe deeply. "Thank you," she said simply. "I am Catherine Harper, but everyone calls me Kate. These are my children." She turned to the wagon and spoke in the firm but gentle voice that had been guiding her family across the plains. "Children, come out and meet the people who are going to help us." One by one, her children climbed down from the wagon bed. Mary held baby William protectively, but her eyes were curious rather than frightened. The twins stood close together, as they always did. But Samuel managed a tentative nod toward Daniel Crowfeather. Lucy hung back near the wagon wheel, still braiding grass stems, while James crossed his arms and tried to look brave. Ruth clung to Kate's skirt, and Benjamin hugged his wooden horse tight. Chief Running Bear spoke to each child in turn, his voice gentle and encouraging, even though they could not understand his words. When he reached baby William, he touched the infant's forehead with careful fingers, then spoke urgently to Daniel. "He says the baby has the fever sickness, but it is not too advanced. Our medicine woman, Singing Crane, will know what to do, but we should go quickly." Kate nodded, then turned to her children. "We are going to travel with Chief Running Bear and his people to their village. They are going to help us repair our wagon and give us food and medicine for William. I know this seems frightening, but these are good people who want to help us reach the settlement safely." Mary shifted William to her other arm, her 15-year-old face serious with responsibility. "If you trust them, Mama, then we do too." The other children nodded solemnly, even little Benjamin. They had learned to trust their mother's judgment during the long weeks on the trail. If she said these strangers would help them, they would believe her. Chief Running Bear and his men worked quickly to fashion a temporary repair for the wagon wheel, using strips of rawhide to bind the cracked wood together. It would not hold for long, but it would get them to the village. Kate gathered their remaining supplies while the children helped secure everything in the wagon bed. As they prepared to leave, Daniel Crowfeather rode up beside Kate's wagon. "Seat, my father wants you to know that some of our people may be suspicious of white settlers at first. There has been trouble with soldiers and other wagon trains. But he has spoken for you, and his word carries weight. You will be safe." Kate nodded her understanding. She had heard enough stories to know that relations between settlers and Indians were complicated and often violent. She could only hope that Chief Running Bear's protection would be enough. The journey to the village took them across rolling grassland, dotted with small groves of cottonwood trees. Chief Running Bear rode ahead, his keen eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of danger. His men flanked the wagon on both sides, their presence reassuring rather than threatening. Kate found herself relaxing for the first time in days, allowing herself to believe that perhaps they would survive this ordeal after all. As they traveled, Daniel Crowfeather told her about their village, about his father's leadership, and the medicine woman who would tend to baby William. He spoke of his own wife and children, of the hunting grounds and the sacred places his people protected. Kate listened with growing respect for these people who had opened their hearts to strangers in need. The sun was beginning to sink toward the western horizon when they crested a low hill and saw the village spread out below them. Dozens of tipis arranged in careful patterns, smoke rising from cook fires, children playing in the spaces between dwellings. It looked peaceful and welcoming, a haven of safety in the vast wilderness. As their wagon rolled down the hill toward the village, Kate Harper allowed herself to hope that this unexpected kindness from strangers might be the beginning of something better than she had dared imagine. Her children pressed against the wagon sides, watching with wide eyes as they approached their temporary sanctuary. Chief Running Bear had appeared in their darkest hour like an answer to prayers she had been too proud to pray. Now as the village welcomed them with curious but friendly faces, Kate began to understand that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected sources. The broken wheel that had seemed like a disaster might have been a blessing in disguise, leading them to people who would show them that kindness could bridge any divide, and that hope could be found even in the most desperate circumstances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, her children would sleep safely under the protection of strangers who had chosen to see them as family rather than enemies. In a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving, Chief Running Bear had reminded her that goodness still existed, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to accept it. The village of Chief Running Bear buzzed with quiet activity as evening shadows stretched across the camp. Kate Harper sat beside a warm fire outside a large tipi, watching as an elderly woman with gentle hands examined baby William. Singing Crane, the medicine woman, hummed softly while she worked, her weathered fingers pressing carefully against the infant's fevered skin. The old woman's face remained calm and focused, giving no hint of what she found in her examination. Around the fire, Kate's other children sat in wonder, their earlier fear replaced by fascination. Samuel and Anna watched wide-eyed as young Lakota children demonstrated how to weave grass into small animals, their quick fingers creating rabbits and birds with practiced ease. Lucy had found a kindred spirit in a girl about her own age who spoke no English but communicated perfectly through smiles and shared giggles. Jane stood with a group of boys near the horse corral, listening intently as they explained through gestures how to read the mood of different animals. Mary held little Ruth close while Benjamin sat on Kate's lap, his wooden horse clutched tight as he stared at the dancing flames. The firelight painted golden circles on their faces, softening the harsh lines that weeks of travel had etched around their eyes. For the first time since leaving Independence, Kate felt her children beginning to relax, their rigid shoulders easing as they absorbed the peaceful atmosphere of the village. Singing Crane finished her examination and spoke quietly to Chief Running Bear in their native tongue. The chief nodded thoughtfully, then gestured for Daniel Crow Feather to translate. Kate held her breath, dreading what the medicine woman might have discovered. Singing Crane says the baby's fever comes from the long journey and poor food, Daniel explained, his voice reassuring. She has seen this many times in children who travel far from home. The sickness is not deep in his spirit. Yet, she will prepare medicines from willow bark and other healing plants. With good rest and proper food, he should recover within a few days. Kate felt tears of relief sting her eyes. William had been growing weaker each day since they left the main wagon train, his tiny body struggling against the constant motion and inadequate nutrition. To hear that his condition was treatable felt like a miracle. Singing Crane disappeared into her tipi and returned with several small bundles of dried herbs. She gestured for Kate to bring William closer, then began preparing a tea from one of the plant mixtures. As she worked, she spoke in a soothing voice, her words musical even though Kate could not understand them. She is telling the baby about the healing power of the willow tree, Daniel translated with a smile. She says the spirits of the forest have agreed to help him grow strong again. Singing Crane believes that speaking to the sick person's spirit is as important as treating their body. The medicine woman finished preparing the tea and offered it to Kate with careful instructions delivered through Daniel. Small sips throughout the night, mixed with the baby's milk if Kate was still nursing. Singing Crane also handed her a poultice, made from crushed leaves, explaining that it should be placed on William's chest to help him breathe more easily. As Kate accepted the medicines, Singing Crane reached out and touched her hand gently. The old woman spoke softly, her dark eyes kind and understanding. She says you are a good mother, Daniel translated. She can see in your face that you have carried much worry for your children. She wants you to know that worry does not make the love stronger. Sometimes a mother must trust others to help carry the burden. Kate nodded, not trusting her voice to respond. The kindness of these strangers overwhelmed her in ways she had not expected. She had spent so many sleepless nights since Thomas died, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility for 8 young lives. To have someone acknowledge that burden and offer to share it brought emotions she had been holding back for months. Chief Running Bear rose from beside the fire and spoke to his son, gesturing toward the tipis arranged around the village center. Daniel listened carefully before turning to Kate. "My father has prepared a lodge for you and your children. It belongs to his sister's family, but they are visiting relatives in another village. You will have privacy and comfort while you rest here. Tomorrow, the men will begin proper repairs on your wagon. The wheelwright in our village is very skilled. He can make your wagon stronger than it was before." Mary looked up from where she sat with Ruth. "How long will the repairs take?" Daniel consulted with his father before answering. 3 days, perhaps 4. The wheel must be completely rebuilt, and we want to reinforce the wagon bed as well. The journey to the settlement is still long and difficult. Your wagon must be able to carry you safely all the way." Kate felt a mixture of gratitude and anxiety. 4 days seemed like a lifetime when they had been pushing so hard to reach Colorado territory before winter. But she also recognized the wisdom in taking time to make proper repairs. A wagon that broke down again in the wilderness would doom them all. "We are grateful for everything you are doing," she said to Chief Running Bear directly, hoping he would understand the sincerity in her voice, even if the words were foreign to him. The chief smiled and nodded, then spoke at length to Daniel. His son's translation revealed depths of generosity that continued to amaze Kate. "My father says that helping your family helps his own spirit. He believes that kindness travels in circles, always returning to the one who gives it freely. He hopes that someday, when you are settled in your new home, you will remember this lesson and help other travelers who need assistance." As the evening wore on, the village women began bringing food to share with the Harper family. Bowls of stew rich with meat and wild vegetables, freshly baked bread made from corn flour, sweet berries preserved from the summer harvest. Kate had not realized how meager their trail rations had become until she tasted real, nourishing food again. Her children ate with enthusiasm they had not shown in weeks, their hollow cheeks already looking less gaunt. Lucy discovered that the Lakota girl who had befriended her was named Morning Star, and despite the language barrier, they managed to teach each other simple words and phrases. Samuel and Anna found themselves drawn into games with children their own age, running and laughing in ways they had not done since leaving Missouri. Even serious Mary relaxed enough to help the village women tend to the cook fires, learning new techniques for preparing food over open flames. James, ever curious about how things worked, shadowed the village wheelwright as the man examined their broken wagon. The craftsman, an elderly man with hands gnarled from decades of woodworking, seemed amused by the boy's eager questions. Through Daniel's translation, he explained how the original wheel had been poorly constructed, with green wood that was prone to cracking under stress. "He says your wagon was built by someone who cared more about speed than quality," Daniel explained as the wheelwright pointed out various flaws in the construction. "Many of the wagons that come through here are made quickly by merchants who know the travelers will be far away when problems develop. But he will build you a wheel that will last for many years." As the fire burned lower and the stars emerged overhead, Kate found herself in conversation with several of the village women. Though they shared no common language, they managed to communicate through gestures and expressions, sharing the universal experiences of motherhood. They showed her their own children, laughed together at the antics of toddlers, and compared the challenges of keeping large families fed and healthy. One woman, whose name Kate learned was Gentle Rain, had 6 children of her own ranging from a baby younger than William to a teenage son who helped with the horse herds. Through Daniel's occasional translation, Kate learned that Gentle Rain had also lost her husband several years earlier, killed in a hunting accident. She had raised her children alone with the support of the village community. She says that being a mother without a husband is the hardest path. Daniel translated as Gentle Rain spoke earnestly to Kate. But she also says it makes a woman stronger than she ever thought possible. She can see that strength in you. When Chief Running Bear announced that it was time to rest, Kate gathered her children and followed him to the tipi that had been prepared for their family. Inside, she found comfortable sleeping robes arranged around a small fire pit, with extra furs piled nearby for warmth. The lodge was spacious enough for all of them, with a smoke hole at the top that allowed the fires warmth to circulate without filling the space with smoke. As Kate settled baby William in his makeshift cradle and helped her other children prepare for sleep, she reflected on the extraordinary day they had just experienced. This morning, she had awakened believing they might die alone on the prairie. Tonight, they were warm and fed and safe, surrounded by people who had shown them more kindness than they had received from their own wagon train. Mary, ever practical despite her youth, voiced the question that had been weighing on Kate's mind. "Mama, do you think they really mean to help us reach the settlement? Or might they decide to keep us here?" Kate considered the question carefully. She had seen no signs of deception or hidden motives in Chief Running Bear or his people. Their kindness seemed genuine, motivated by compassion rather than calculation. But she also understood her daughter's concern. They were completely dependent on the goodwill of strangers whose customs and motivations they did not fully understand. "I believe they mean exactly what they have said," Kate replied quietly, not wanting to wake the younger children who were already drifting off to sleep. Chief Running Bear could have taken anything he wanted from us when he found us. Instead, he offered help and asked for nothing in return. "That tells me we can trust him," Mary nodded thoughtfully. "He reminds me a little of Papa, the way he looks at children with such kindness, and the way the other men respect him without fear." Kate smiled at the comparison. Thomas had indeed been the kind of man who inspired loyalty through gentleness rather than intimidation. Perhaps that was why she had felt instinctively drawn to trust Chief Running Bear despite all the warnings she had heard about hostile Indians. As her children settled into sleep around the warm fire, Kate held William close and listened to his breathing. Already, the baby seemed to be resting more peacefully. Singing Crane's medicine appeared to be working, bringing down the fever that had terrified Kate for days. The relief of knowing her youngest child would recover filled her with gratitude. So profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Outside the tipi, she could hear the quiet sounds of the village settling into night. Soft voices speaking in the melodious Lakota language, the gentle lowing of horses in their corral, the distant howl of a coyote answered by others across the prairie. It was peaceful in a way that the wagon train had never been, despite the constant presence of other families. There, the focus had always been on pushing forward, covering ground, reaching the destination as quickly as possible. Here, there was a sense of being exactly where they belonged, at least for now. Kate thought about the women she had met around the cook fires, about the strength she had seen in Gentle Rain's face when she spoke of raising children alone. It occurred to her that she had been thinking of herself as uniquely unfortunate, as though she were the only woman who had ever faced such challenges. But these Lakota women had shown her that widowhood and single motherhood were struggles shared by women across all cultures and circumstances. The knowledge was both humbling and empowering. She was not as alone as she had believed. Other women had walked this difficult path and survived, even thrived. If they could raise their children successfully within the supportive structure of the village, perhaps she could find a way to build something similar in the settlement that awaited them. As sleep finally began to claim her, Kate Harper allowed herself to hope that the kindness she had discovered in Chief Running Bear's village was a sign of good things to come. Perhaps their journey west would lead not just to a new home, but to a new understanding of what family and community could mean. Perhaps the loss of Thomas, devastating as it had been, would ultimately lead them toward connections and experiences they could never have imagined while living their quiet life. Back in Missouri, tomorrow would bring new challenges and new discoveries. But tonight, surrounded by the warmth of unexpected friendship and the promise of healing for her baby, Kate felt something she had not experienced since before Thomas died. She felt genuinely hopeful about the future. The morning sun painted the village in shades of gold and amber as Kate emerged from the tipi with baby William in her arms. The infant's fever had broken during the night, and his eyes were bright and alert for the first time in days. Around the village, people were already busy with the day's activities, tending to horses, preparing food, and working on various crafts and repairs. Chief Running Bear approached her with Daniel Crowfeather at his side, both men wearing expressions of satisfaction as they observed William's improved condition. The chief spoke softly to the baby, his weathered hands gentle as he touched the infant's forehead. He smiled broadly when he felt the normal temperature of healthy skin. "My father says the spirits have smiled on your son," Daniel translated. "Singing Crane's medicine has driven out the sickness. He will grow strong and healthy now." Kate felt tears of gratitude threaten again. "Please tell your father that we owe our baby's life to him and a singing crane. I will never forget this kindness." As Daniel conveyed her words, Chief Running Bear shook his head and replied with what sounded like gentle correction. "He says you owe nothing. A baby's health is a gift from the Great Spirit, not something that can be bought or sold. He was merely the messenger who brought you to the healer. The gratitude belongs to the creator of all life." Kate found herself deeply moved by the chief's humility. In her experience, men who possessed power and wisdom often demanded recognition for their contributions. But Chief Running Bear seemed genuinely uninterested in claiming credit for the miracle of William's recovery. Around the village, her other children were already immersing themselves in the daily rhythms of Lakota life. Samuel and Anna had joined a group of young people learning to prepare animal hides for various uses, their faces serious with concentration, as they followed the patient instructions of their teachers. Lucy and Morning Star had discovered a patch of wild berries at the edge of the village and were gathering them under the watchful eye of Gentle Rain. James had positioned himself next to the wheelwright, who was beginning the process of crafting a new wheel for their wagon. The old craftsman seemed to enjoy having an eager apprentice, explaining each step of the process through gestures and the occasional translated word from passing villagers. Kate watched her son's face light up with understanding as he began to grasp the principles of weight distribution and structural integrity that went into building something meant to last. Mary had volunteered to help with the morning meal preparation, working alongside village women who welcomed her assistance with warm smiles. Kate could see her eldest daughter absorbing lessons about cooking over open fires and preserving food for long journeys, knowledge that would serve the family well. In the challenges that lay ahead, little Ruth had found a group of children near her own age and was attempting to learn a clapping game that involved intricate hand movements and rhythmic chanting. Her laughter rang across the village as she stumbled through the complex patterns, her mistakes met with encouraging giggles from her new friends rather than criticism. Benjamin, her youngest boy, had discovered the village dogs and was in heaven playing with a litter of puppies while their patient mother watched from nearby. The sight of her serious little son giggling with delight as puppies tumbled over him brought warmth to Kate's heart. He had been so quiet and withdrawn since his father's death, and seeing him play like a normal 4-year-old reminded her that children's spirits could heal faster than their bodies if given the right environment. As the morning progressed, Kate found herself drawn into conversations with village women who seemed eager to share their knowledge and learn about her own experiences. Through Daniel's translation and increasingly sophisticated gestures, she learned about their methods for preserving meat, their techniques for treating various childhood illnesses, and their strategies for keeping large families organized and fed. Gentle Rain proved to be particularly helpful, sharing practical advice about traveling with children and managing the challenges of single motherhood. She explained how the village structure provided support for families without fathers, with different members of the community taking responsibility for various aspects of child rearing. She says that among our people, children belong to the whole village, not just to their birth parents. Daniel translated as Gentle Rain spoke earnestly to Kate. When a father dies, the uncles and grandfathers step forward to teach the boys what they need to know. The aunts and grandmothers help guide the girls. No child grows up without many people who love and care for them. Kate found herself envying this system of shared responsibility. The isolation she had felt since Thomas's death seemed almost cruel by comparison. In the settlement they were heading toward, she would be expected to manage everything alone, with perhaps occasional help from neighbors who had their own families to worry about. "Do you think such a system could work among white settlers?" she asked Daniel during a quiet moment. He considered the question carefully before responding. "It requires people to think beyond their own immediate family. In a village like ours, everyone knows that helping others ultimately helps themselves. But I have observed that many white settlements focus more on individual success than community welfare. It would be difficult to change such deeply held beliefs." The conversation gave Kate much to think about as she watched her children thriving in the supportive environment of the village. Perhaps part of building a new life in Colorado Territory would involve finding ways to create stronger community bonds among the settlers there. If she could help establish systems of mutual support, similar to what she was witnessing here, it might benefit not only her own family, but many others as well. Chief Running Bear approached her again as the sun reached its zenith, this time accompanied by the wheelwright and several other village elders. The old craftsman spoke at length, his gnarled hands gesturing toward the wagon, and then toward various tools and materials arranged nearby. "Gray Wolf says your wagon wheel will be ready by tomorrow evening," Daniel translated. "But he recommends several other improvements while we have the time and materials. The wagon bed should be reinforced with additional bracing, and the canvas cover needs patches and waterproofing for the mountain passes ahead. He estimates that with all the improvements, your wagon will be stronger and more reliable than when you first left Missouri." Kate nodded gratefully. "Please tell Gray Wolf that we appreciate his expertise and will gladly accept whatever improvements he recommends." Chief Running Bear smiled and spoke again, his words carrying the weight of careful consideration. "My father says that tomorrow we will also discuss the route to the settlement. There are two possible paths through the mountains. One is shorter, but more dangerous with narrow passes and steep grades. The other takes longer but provides more water and better grazing for the horses. He wants to understand your situation better before recommending which path would be best for your family." The mention of continuing their journey brought mixed feelings to Kate's heart. She was grateful beyond words for the help they were receiving, and she looked forward to reaching their destination and beginning the new life Thomas had envisioned for them. But she also felt reluctant to leave this place where her children had rediscovered joy and where she had experienced such profound kindness from strangers. That evening, as the village gathered around the central fire for communal storytelling, Kate found herself included in the circle as though she had always belonged there. The stories were told in Lakota, but Daniel provided occasional translations of the main points, and the universal elements of human drama transcended language barriers. One story seemed to be about a great flood that forced different tribes to work together for survival. Another told of a brave woman who led her people to safety during a harsh winter when all the men were away hunting. Kate recognized the themes of courage, sacrifice, and community that appeared in the folklore of all cultures, and she felt a deep connection to these people who valued the same fundamental human virtues she had been taught to cherish. When the formal storytelling ended, Singing Crane approached Kate with a small leather pouch decorated with intricate beadwork. The medicine woman spoke softly while pressing the pouch into Kate's hands. "She has prepared medicines for your journey," Daniel explained. "Herbs for fever, plants that ease stomach troubles, and roots that help with pain from injuries. She says a mother traveling with many children should always carry such things." Kate accepted the gift with profound gratitude, understanding that Singing Crane was entrusting her with knowledge passed down through generations of healers. The pouch represented not just practical medicine, but also a connection to the wisdom and traditions of the Lakota people. As the evening wound down and families began returning to their lodges, Kate gathered her children for their second night. In the village, she could see that they were all reluctant to leave the warmth and companionship of the community fire, but they followed her without complaint. Inside their borrowed tipi, as she helped the younger children settle into their sleeping robes, Mary voiced what they were all thinking. "I wish we could stay here longer, Mama. These people have been so kind to us, and the children seem so happy." Kate nodded, understanding her daughter's sentiment completely. "I feel the same way, Mary, but we must remember that we are guests. Here, Chief Running Bear and his people have their own lives to live, and we have our own destination to reach. The best way to honor their kindness is to carry their example with us and share it with others when we reach the settlement." Samuel looked up from where he was arranging his sleeping furs. "Do you think the people in Colorado Territory will be as nice as Chief Running Bear's village?" It was a question Kate had been pondering herself. The settlement they were heading toward was reportedly populated by families seeking fresh starts, much like themselves. But she had learned from bitter experience that desperation and hardship could bring out either the best or the worst in people. "I hope so," she answered honestly. "But even if they are not, we will remember what we have learned here about kindness and community. Perhaps we can help create the same sort of caring environment in our new home." Anna, always the more practical of the twins, asked, "Will we ever see Chief Running Bear and his people again?" Kate considered the question carefully. The paths of white settlers and Indian tribes rarely crossed peacefully, and the growing tensions she had heard about suggested that such interactions would become increasingly rare and difficult. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I believe that some meetings change us so profoundly that the people become part of us forever, even if we never see them again. Chief Running Bear and his people will always be with us in our hearts and in the lessons they have taught us." As her children drifted off to sleep around the warm fire, Kate held baby William close and reflected on the extraordinary transformation their family had undergone in just 2 days. They had arrived broken down and desperate, facing an uncertain future with depleted resources and flagging spirits. They would leave with a repaired wagon, restored health, and most importantly, renewed faith in the fundamental goodness of humanity. The experience had taught her that help could come from the most unexpected sources, and that kindness knew no boundaries of race or culture. It had shown her children that the world contained far more friends than enemies if one had the wisdom to recognize friendship when it was offered. Most significantly, it had given her a new vision of what community could be. Instead of viewing their upcoming life in the settlement as an individual struggle for survival, she could now imagine working to build the kind of supportive network she had witnessed in Chief Running Bear's village. The Lakota had shown her that no one had to face life's challenges alone if people were willing to look beyond their own immediate concerns to care for their neighbors. As sleep claimed her, Kate Harper knew that regardless of what challenges awaited them in Colorado Territory, her family would face them with strength they had not possessed before arriving at this village. They had been given more than just practical help and medical care. They had been given hope, community, and a living example of what human beings could accomplish when they chose compassion over fear. Tomorrow would bring the final preparations for their journey, and the day after that would see them back on the trail toward their new home. But they would carry with them the memory of this place and these people, and perhaps most importantly, the knowledge that kindness shared freely always returns in unexpected and wonderful ways. The third dawn in the village brought an unexpected challenge that would test everything Kate Harper thought she understood about the people who had welcomed her family. She woke to the sound of urgent voices outside their tipi, speaking in rapid Lakota that carried tones of concern and disagreement. Through the hide walls, she could hear horses moving restlessly and the sound of many feet hurrying across the village. Kate wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside, baby William still sleeping peacefully in her arms. The scene that greeted her made her stomach clench with familiar fear. A group of warriors she had not seen before sat mounted at the edge of the village, their faces painted for war, their weapons clearly visible. These were not the gentle, welcoming people she had come to know. These men looked hard and dangerous, and their eyes swept over her with unmistakable hostility. Chief Running Bear stood in the center of the village with several of his senior warriors, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with the newcomers. His posture was straight and commanding, but Kate could sense the tension radiating from him even at a distance. Daniel Crowfeather moved between the groups, his young face serious as he translated rapidly between different speakers. Around the village, the women and children had gathered in small clusters, their usual morning activities forgotten as they watched the confrontation unfold. Kate spotted her own children among them, their faces reflecting the same anxiety she felt building in her chest. Mary held Ruth close while Samuel and Anna flanked them protectively. James stood with the village boys, trying to look brave while his eyes darted nervously between the warriors and his family. Gentle Rain approached Kate with quick, purposeful steps, her expression grave as she spoke in urgent whispers. Though Kate could not understand the words, the woman's gestures toward the mounted warriors and then toward Kate's family made the situation clear enough. These newcomers were not pleased about the presence of white settlers in the village. The argument continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Voices rose and fell, hands gestured emphatically, and several times it seemed as though the disagreement might escalate into something more serious. Kate found herself gripping William tighter, her mind racing with possibilities for protecting her children if the situation turned violent. Finally, Chief Running Bear raised his voice above the others, speaking with such authority that immediate silence fell over the gathering. His words carried the weight of final judgment, delivered with the calm certainty of a leader who would not be challenged. The mounted warriors listened without interruption, their faces showing grudging respect even as several continued to glare in Kate's direction. When the chief finished speaking, one of the newcomers responded with what sounded like a formal declaration. His tone was respectful but firm, suggesting that while he accepted Chief Running Bear's authority, he was not entirely satisfied with the decision. After another brief exchange, the warriors wheeled their horses around and rode away from the village, disappearing into the morning mist that clung to the grasslands. Daniel Crowfeather walked over to where Kate stood with the other women, his expression troubled but relieved. Around them, the village began to return to its normal rhythms, though Kate noticed that conversations remained subdued and many people continued to glance toward the direction the warriors had taken. "Those men were from the Crow tribe," Daniel explained quietly. "They have been raiding through this territory, taking horses and supplies from anyone they encounter. They came here hoping to trade for fresh mounts and discovered your family in our village." Kate felt her heart sink. She had feared something like this might happen, though she had pushed the worry to the back of her mind during the peaceful days they had spent here. What did they want? Daniel hesitated before answering, clearly choosing his words carefully. They believed that my father was harboring enemies. In their minds, all white settlers are potential threats who steal land and bring soldiers to fight our people. They demanded that he turn your family over to them. The blood drained from Kate's face as she understood the implications. She had heard enough stories around wagon train campfires to know what the Crow warriors would do to a lone woman with 8 children. The fact that Chief Running Bear had refused their demand put his own people at risk of retaliation. "What? Did your father tell them?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. Daniel's expression softened slightly. "He told them that you and your children are under his protection, and that anyone who wishes to harm you would have to go through him first. He reminded them that his village has never taken sides in the conflicts between white settlers and Indian tribes, and that he will not be forced to abandon his principles now." Kate felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Chief Running Bear had done for them. By protecting her family, he had potentially made enemies of dangerous raiders, who could return with greater numbers and deadlier intentions. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her like a physical burden. "He should not have to risk his people's safety for us," she said quietly. "Perhaps it would be better if we left immediately, before those warriors decide to come." Back with reinforcements, Daniel shook his head firmly. "My father considered that possibility and rejected it. He says that giving in to threats would only encourage more demands from raiders and bullies. Besides, your wagon is still being repaired. To send you away now would be the same as condemning you to death on the prairie." As the morning progressed, Kate became aware of the subtle changes in the village atmosphere. While most people continued to treat her family with kindness, she noticed more watchful glances and hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. It was clear that the presence of her family had introduced an element of danger that some villagers found troubling. The division became more apparent when Gray Wolf, the wheelwright, approached Chief Running Bear with several other craftsmen. Their discussion was conducted in low voices, but Kate could see from their gestures and expressions that they were debating something related to her family's wagon. After a lengthy conversation, Gray Wolf returned to his work with obvious reluctance. His earlier enthusiasm for the project noticeably diminished. Daniel noticed Kate watching the exchange and came over to explain. "Some of the men believe we should complete your wagon as quickly as possible and send you on your way before the Crow warriors return. They are not cruel, but they worry about the safety of their own families." Kate nodded, understanding their concern completely. She would feel the same way if the situation were reversed. "And what does your father think?" "He believes that fear should never dictate how we treat people who need help. He says that if we abandon our principles every time someone threatens us, we become no better than the raiders themselves." The philosophical debate playing out in the village reflected larger tensions that Kate was only beginning to understand. The peaceful coexistence that Chief Running Bear's people had maintained required constant vigilance and careful diplomacy. Her family's presence had disrupted that delicate balance, forcing the village to choose between safety and principle. As the day wore on, Kate found herself watching for signs of returning warriors on the horizon. Every distant dust cloud or movement in the grass made her heart race with anxiety. She tried to keep her fears hidden from her children, but she could see that they sensed the change in atmosphere around the village. Mary, always perceptive beyond her years, approached her mother during the afternoon. "Some of the people here seem worried about us now, Mama. Are we causing trouble for Chief Running Bear?" Kate considered how much truth to share with her 15-year-old daughter. Mary was old enough to understand the situation, but Kate did not want to burden her with adult fears. "There are some complications," she admitted carefully. "But Chief Running Bear knew the risks when he offered to help us. He is a wise leader who makes decisions based on what he believes is right, not on what is easy or safe." Mary nodded solemnly, like Papa used to do. "Remember when he helped the Hendersons even though their fever might have spread to us?" He said that doing the right thing sometimes meant accepting danger. The comparison to Thomas brought tears to Kate's eyes. Her husband had indeed been a man who acted on principle rather than convenience, and she could see why Chief Running Bear reminded her of him. Both men possessed the rare courage to stand by their convictions, even when it cost them personally. That evening, the village gathering around the central fire was smaller than usual. Several families chose to remain in their own lodges, and the conversations were more subdued than they had been on previous nights. Kate noticed that some people avoided making eye contact with her, while others seemed to make a point of being especially welcoming, as if to compensate for the coolness of their neighbors. Chief Running Bear addressed the gathering in a speech that Daniel translated in segments. The chief spoke about the importance of maintaining their values in difficult times, about the difference between prudent caution and cowardly abandonment of principle. He reminded his people that their village had always been a place of sanctuary for those in need, regardless of their race or origin. He is telling them that our reputation as a peaceful people comes not from avoiding conflict, but from doing what is right even when it is difficult, Daniel explained quietly to Kate. He says that if we turn away from helping others because of threats from raiders, we become complicit in their cruelty. The speech seemed to have the desired effect on most of the villagers, though Kate could see that some remained unconvinced. She understood their position and felt guilty for putting them in such a difficult situation. No one should have to choose between their safety and their principles because of strangers who had arrived unexpectedly in their midst. After the gathering dispersed, Chief Running Bear approached Kate with Daniel at his side. The chief's expression was serious but not unkind as he spoke at length in his native language. "My father wants you to know that he does not regret his decision to protect your family," Daniel translated. "But he also wants you to understand the full situation you are facing. The Crow warriors will likely return, possibly with larger numbers. They may try to attack the village to force us to surrender you, or they may wait and ambush your wagon once you leave our protection." Kate felt her stomach twist with fear and guilt. "What can we do? I will not be responsible for bringing harm to your people." Chief Running Bear smiled grimly and continued speaking through Daniel. "He says there is a third option that might resolve the situation safely for everyone. But it would require courage from your family and trust in people you do not know well." "What kind of option?" Kate asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. Daniel hesitated before explaining. "There is a cavalry patrol that passes through this region every few weeks. They follow a route that takes them near the settlement you are trying to reach. If we could get word to them and arrange an escort, the Crow warriors would not dare attack a military unit." The suggestion made sense from a practical standpoint, but Kate could see the complications immediately. How would we contact this patrol? And would they be willing to help a family of civilians? "My father has contacts among the peaceful tribes who trade with the military posts. Word could be sent asking the patrol to meet your wagon at a specific location. As for their willingness to help, soldiers are generally required to assist settlers in distress, especially families with children." Kate considered the proposal carefully. It would mean extending their stay in the village while messages were sent and arrangements made. It would also mean continuing to put Chief Running Bear's people at risk while they waited for military assistance that might not come. "How long would such arrangements take?" she asked. Daniel consulted with his father before answering. "Perhaps a week, maybe longer. The messages must travel far, and there's no guarantee the patrol will be in the right location at the right time." A week seemed like an eternity when enemy warriors might return at any moment. But Kate could see no better alternative that did not involve abandoning her children to almost certain death on the prairie. "If Chief Running Bear is willing to take such risks for our sake, then we will trust his judgment," she said finally. "But I want it understood that if the situation becomes too dangerous for the village, We will leave immediately, regardless of the consequences." Chief Running Bear nodded approvingly when Daniel translated her response. He spoke again, his tone carrying new warmth and respect. "He says you have the wisdom to balance gratitude with responsibility. That is the mark of a true leader. He believes you will do well in your new home, and that your children will grow to be people their father would be proud of." As Kate prepared her family for another night in the village, she reflected on the complex situation they now faced. What had seemed like a simple rescue had evolved into something much more complicated, involving questions of loyalty, principle, and survival that went far beyond their immediate needs. But she had also seen something in Chief Running Bear that gave her hope. Here was a man who understood that true strength came not from avoiding difficult choices, but from making the right choice regardless of the cost. His willingness to risk his people's safety for the sake of strangers demonstrated a kind of moral courage that seemed increasingly rare in her experience. The night passed without incident, though Kate noticed that extra guards had been posted around the village perimeter. She slept fitfully, waking at every small sound and checking repeatedly to make sure all her children were safe in their sleeping robes. Baby William mercifully seemed oblivious to the tension and slept peacefully through the night. Morning brought news that lifted Kate's spirits considerably. Daniel arrived at their tipi with word that his father's messengers had made contact with a friendly tribe that maintained regular communication with the military outposts. A message had been sent requesting escort assistance for a family of settlers traveling to the Colorado Territory settlement. "The tribe that carried our message promises to deliver a response within 3 days," Daniel explained. "If the cavalry patrol is available, they will meet your wagon at Willow Creek Crossing, which is halfway between here and your destination." Kate felt a surge of hope at this news. Willow Creek Crossing was a landmark she remembered from the maps Thomas had studied before their journey began. If they could reach that point safely, they would be well on their way to their new home with military protection for the most dangerous part of the journey. "What happens if the cavalry cannot help us?" she asked, though she tried to keep the worry out of her voice. Daniel's expression grew serious. "Then my father will provide an escort of his own warriors to see you safely to the settlement. It would be more dangerous since the Crow Raiders would not hesitate to attack our people, but he has given his word to see you safely to your destination." The magnitude of Chief Running Bear's commitment overwhelmed Kate once again. This man was prepared to risk the lives of his own warriors rather than abandon a promise made to strangers. Such loyalty and honor seemed almost mythical in its scope. As the day progressed, Kate noticed that the atmosphere in the village had begun to shift again. The possibility of military assistance seemed to have eased some people's concerns about harboring her family. Conversations returned to more normal tones, and several villagers who had seemed distant the day before resumed their friendly interactions with her children. Gray Wolf, the wheelwright, approached her with obvious relief written across his weathered features. Through Daniel's translation, he explained that he had completed the new wheel and was now focusing on the additional reinforcements that would make their wagon capable of handling mountain passes and rough terrain. He says your wagon will be ready tomorrow, but he recommends waiting for word about the cavalry escort before departing. A day or two of additional preparation could make the difference between success and disaster on the trail ahead. Kate nodded gratefully. The extra time would also allow baby William to regain more of his strength and give her other children additional opportunities to absorb the lessons they were learning from their Lakota friends. That afternoon brought an unexpected complication that reminded Kate how precarious their situation remained. A lone rider approached the village from the east, traveling at a pace that suggested urgent business. As he drew closer, Kate could see that he was not one of the Crow warriors they had been watching for, but rather a white man wearing the rough clothing of a frontier scout or trader. The rider's arrival caused a stir throughout the village. since white visitors were apparently quite rare. Chief Running Bear met him at the village edge with several warriors, and their conversation was conducted in a mixture of English and various Indian languages that Daniel strained to follow. After a lengthy discussion, the rider departed as quickly as he had arrived, leaving the village buzzing with speculation about his message. Chief Running Bear called for Daniel and spoke with him urgently before sending him to find Kate. The rider brought news from the east, Daniel explained when he reached her. Another wagon train was attacked by Crow raiders 2 days ago. Several people were killed, and the survivors scattered across the prairie. Some may be trying to reach this area on foot. Kate felt her blood run cold. The attack could have been the wagon train that had abandoned her family, or it could have been innocent travelers who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Either way, it demonstrated that the Crow warriors were actively raiding in the region, and that the danger to anyone traveling alone was very real. What does this mean for us? She asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Daniel's expression confirmed her fears. It means that Crow raiders are still in the area and actively hunting for targets. If they discover that we are sheltering your family, they may decide to attack the village rather than wait for you to leave our protection. The news forced Kate to confront a terrible decision. Staying in the village put innocent people at risk, but leaving before arrangements could be made for an escort would almost certainly doom her family to the same fate that had befallen the other wagon train. As she struggled with the implications, Chief Running Bear approached with several of his senior warriors. The chief spoke directly to Kate in careful English, his first attempt to communicate with her in her own language. "White woman," he said slowly, his accent thick but his words clear. "You choose. We protect you here, or we send warriors with you now. Both ways have danger, but you decide what is best for your children." Kate stared at the chief, overwhelmed by the weight of the choice he was giving her. This man was willing to risk everything for her family, but he was also wise enough to understand that the final decision had to be hers. Whatever happened next would be her responsibility to bear. She looked around the village at the people who had shown her such kindness, at her children who had found happiness and security in this place, at the warriors who stood ready to fight for strangers because their chief had given his word. The magnitude of the decision pressed down on her like a physical weight. "Give me until tomorrow morning to decide," she said finally. "This choice will affect more than just my family, and I need time to consider all the consequences." Chief Running Bear nodded approvingly. "Wise woman thinks before acting. Tomorrow we know cavalry answer. Then choice is more clear." As evening fell over the village, Kate gathered her children in their tipi and explained the situation as gently as she could. They needed to understand the danger they faced and the difficult choice that lay ahead, but she tried not to frighten them unnecessarily. Mary, as always, grasped the implications immediately. "So we have to choose between putting these good people in danger or taking our chances alone on the prairie." "That is essentially the choice," Kate confirmed. "Chief Running Bear has offered to send warriors with us if we decide to leave. But that would put their lives at risk as well." Samuel spoke up with the earnestness of a 12-year-old trying to understand adult problems. "What would Papa have done, Mama?" The question pierced Kate's heart because she knew exactly what Thomas would have chosen. Her husband would never have been able to live with himself if innocent people were harmed because of his family's presence. He would have chosen to face the danger himself rather than let others bear the cost of his decisions. "Your father would have done whatever he believed was right, regardless of the risk to himself," she answered honestly. "And he would have expected us to do the same." As her children settled into sleep, Kate sat by the fire holding baby William and wrestling with the most difficult decision of her life. Tomorrow would bring word about the cavalry escort, and she would have to choose a path forward that could determine whether her family lived or died. But she had learned something important during their time in Chief Running Bear's village. She had discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do the right thing, despite being afraid. Tomorrow she would need to find that kind of courage and trust that it would be enough to see her family through whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning that would change everything dawned crisp and clear, with autumn frost glittering on the grass like scattered diamonds. Kate Harper woke before sunrise, her stomach tight with anticipation as she waited for word from the cavalry patrol. Today would bring either salvation or the most dangerous decision of her life, and she found herself praying to a God who seemed very far away from the Nebraska territory. Baby William stirred in her arms, his small body warm and healthy after the miraculous recovery brought about by Singing Crane's medicines. The sight of his bright eyes and pink cheeks reminded Kate of why every risk was worthwhile. Her children deserved a chance at the life Thomas had dreamed of for them, and she would move mountains to give them that opportunity. Outside the tipi, she could hear the village stirring to life with unusual energy. Voices carried an undercurrent of excitement that had been missing for the past few days, and Kate dared to hope that good news was coming. She dressed quickly and emerged into the cool morning air to find Daniel Crowfeather approaching with a smile that lit up his entire face. "The messenger has returned," he announced without preamble. "Captain Morrison of the 4th Cavalry will meet your wagon at Willow Creek Crossing in 3 days' time. He has 12 men with him and permission to escort civilian families to any settlement within the territory." Kate felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. The cavalry would provide the protection they needed to complete their journey safely, and Chief Running Bear's village would no longer be at risk because of their presence. It seemed too good to be true after so many setbacks and dangers. "Are you certain?" she asked, needing to hear the confirmation again. Daniel nodded enthusiastically. The messenger spoke directly with Captain Morrison at Fort Hays. "The captain remembers meeting your husband in Independence before you began your journey. He said Thomas Harper had impressed him as a good man trying to do right by his family, and he would be honored to help Thomas's widow reach her destination safely." The mention of Thomas brought tears to Kate's eyes. Even in death, her husband's reputation for integrity and kindness was opening doors for his family. She could almost feel his presence in the morning air, as if he were watching over them and ensuring they received the help they needed. Chief Running Bear approached with several of his warriors, all wearing expressions of satisfaction and relief. The chief spoke directly to Kate in his careful English, his words carrying the weight of formal pronouncement. "Good news brings good spirits," he said with a rare smile. "Your path forward is clear now. Tomorrow we finish wagon preparations, and the next day you travel to meet the soldier chief. My warriors will escort you to Willow Creek to make sure you arrive safely." Kate felt overwhelmed by the generosity of this man who had already risked so much for her family. "Chief Running Bear, I cannot find words to express our gratitude for everything you have done. You saved our lives and gave us hope when we had none." The chief nodded gravely, then spoke at greater length in Lakota. Daniel translated with obvious emotion in his voice. "My father says that helping your family has been a gift to his own spirit. He says that your courage in the face of hardship reminds him of the warriors who protect our people, and your devotion to your children honors the sacred bond between parent and child. He believes that meeting you is arranged by the Great Spirit to teach both our peoples that kindness transcends the boundaries that divide us." Around the village, Kate could see the visible relaxation that came with the resolution of the crisis. People who had been tense and watchful for days now moved with their normal easy grace. Children resumed their games and laughter, while adults returned to their regular work with renewed energy. The threat of conflict had passed, and life could return to its peaceful rhythms. Gray Wolf, the wheelwright, approached with obvious pride in his weathered features. Through Daniel's translation, he explained that the wagon was now ready for travel and had been reinforced beyond anything Kate could have imagined. New iron braces supported the bed, The wheels were built to withstand mountain terrain, and the canvas cover had been treated with substances that would repel both water and wind. He says your wagon is now strong enough to carry your family all the way to California if you choose, Daniel explained with a grin. But he hopes you will be satisfied with reaching the Colorado settlement. Kate examined the rebuilt wagon with amazement. What had been a serviceable but fragile conveyance was now a robust vehicle capable of handling whatever challenges the trail might present. The craftsmanship was superior to anything she had seen, with attention to details that spoke of genuine care for the people who would depend on it for their lives. The afternoon brought a celebration unlike anything Kate had witnessed during their stay in the village. Word of the successful arrangements had spread among the neighboring tribes, and delegations arrived throughout the day to wish the Harper family well on their journey. Kate found herself meeting chiefs and elders from across the region, all eager to express their approval of Chief Running Bear's actions. One elderly woman, introduced as Grandmother Willow from a village 2 days' ride to the north, spoke at length through an interpreter. Her words, when translated, brought fresh tears to Kate's eyes. She says that your story will be told around council fires for many generations. The tale of the white mother who trusted Indian kindness and the Lakota chief who risked everything to protect strangers will remind our children that peace between peoples is possible when hearts are open to compassion. Kate realized that their experience had significance far beyond her family's immediate needs. In a time of growing tension and mistrust between white settlers and Indian tribes, Chief Running Bear's actions had created a powerful example of what cooperation and mutual respect could accomplish. Their story might inspire others to choose understanding over fear when faced with similar situations. As the day progressed, Kate found herself drawn into conversations with village women who wanted to share final pieces of advice for the journey ahead. Gentle Rain presented her with a beautifully crafted baby carrier that would allow her to keep William close while leaving her hands free for other tasks. Singing Crane added several more packets of medicine to Kate's supply, along with detailed instructions for their use. The mountain passes can be cold even in autumn, Singing Crane explained through Daniel's translation. These herbs will help if any of your children develop the breathing sickness that comes from thin air and sudden temperature changes. Morning Star, the young girl who had befriended Lucy, approached with a gift of her own. She pressed a small doll into Lucy's hands, created from traditional materials and dressed in miniature Lakota clothing. The doll's face was painted with the same care that would be given to a sacred ceremonial object. She wants your sister to remember her and all the children of our village, Daniel explained as Morning Star spoke earnestly to Lucy. She says that no matter how far apart you are, you will always be sisters at heart. Lucy hugged the doll close, tears spilling down her cheeks. Watching her children form such deep friendships in the village had been one of the greatest, if unexpected, gifts of their time there, and Kate knew saying goodbye would be hard for all of them. Samuel and Anna spent their last afternoon learning songs and games from their Lakota friends, trying to commit every detail to memory before they left. James stayed busy helping Gray Wolf, soaking up final bits of knowledge about woodworking and wagon repairs that would surely be useful in the life ahead. Even little Benjamin had made a special connection. An elder who carved wooden animals had gifted him a small horse, perfectly matching one his father had made, and gently explained through Daniel that, like people, horses needed friends. Practical as ever, Mary spent the day gathering recipes and household advice from the village women, filling a small notebook with tips on preserving food, treating sickness, and managing large families in tough times. Kate watched her eldest with pride, seeing glimpses of the capable young woman Mary was becoming and knowing these lessons would serve her well in the years to come. As dusk settled, the village prepared a farewell feast in the Harper families' honor. Families contributed their best dishes, and the central fire blazed higher than usual in celebration. Kate felt deeply touched and a little overwhelmed by the care and effort being shown. Chief Running Bear approached, his face serious despite the cheerful bustle around them. He spoke carefully in English, choosing his words with care. "Tomorrow you leave our protection and begin a new chapter with your own people. I wish to offer you some guidance for the days ahead." Kate listened intently, knowing this was no small gesture. "In white settlements," the chief continued, thoughtfully, "people often forget the strength found in community. They look only to their own families and forget that we are stronger when we work together. You have seen how our people share and help one another. Take that lesson with you. Teach it to your new neighbors." His words touched Kate deeply. She had seen for herself how cooperation and shared responsibility made the village stronger. If she could bring even a little of that spirit to their new home, it could change everything. "I promise I will remember all that I've learned here," she said sincerely. "Your people have taught me the true meaning of community, and I will try to create the same in our new settlement." Chief Running Bear smiled gently. "And remember this too. Those who seem like enemies may be friends waiting to be found. The crow who once threatened you are not bad men. They are frightened men, protecting what they love. Fear can drive people to cruelty, but kindness sometimes reaches beyond fear to the good within." Kate nodded, though part of her doubted. She could never be brave enough to show kindness to people who might wish her family harm. The chief's wisdom ran deep, but living it would take more courage than she was sure she had. That evening's feast surpassed anything they had experienced. During their stay, plate after plate appeared, simple ingredients transformed into unforgettable dishes by skillful hands. Kate tasted flavors that seemed to reflect the prairie's soul. Between courses, villagers spoke about what the Harpers had meant to them. Through Daniel's translations, Kate heard story after story of how her children had touched lives. Samuel's eagerness to learn, Anna's gentleness, Lucy's infectious laughter, James's curiosity. Even baby William's recovery had lifted spirits and renewed faith in traditional healing. Mary's maturity and helpfulness had impressed many, who saw in her a future leader. One warrior who had once wanted the family to leave stood to speak. His honesty moved Kate. "He says your family taught him not to judge too quickly," Daniel translated. "He feared you would bring trouble. Now he sees that sometimes blessings come disguised as problems. And opening our hearts to strangers can enrich our lives in unexpected ways." As speeches ended, music and dancing began. Kate and her children joined the circle, stumbling through the steps of traditional dances, but welcomed with laughter and encouragement. Even baby William clapped along to the beat. The sight of her children dancing by firelight with their Lakota friends etched itself into Kate's memory forever, a moment where differences vanished, leaving only shared joy. As night deepened and families returned to their homes, Kate felt the sorrow of parting weigh on her. Tomorrow would bring final preparations, and soon they would leave this place that had become more than just a refuge. It had become a second home, and the people, a second family. Chief Running Bear approached her one final time as the fire burned low, his weathered face thoughtful in the flickering light. He spoke quietly, his words intended for her alone. "Tomorrow is a hard day for saying goodbye," he said in his careful English, "but remember that some partings are not endings, only pauses. The Great Spirit may bring our paths together again when we least expect it." Kate nodded, hoping against hope that his words might prove prophetic. "I will never forget what you and your people have done for us. Someday, when my children are grown and settled, I hope they will return to visit this place and tell their own children about the kindness they found here." The chief smiled at the thought. Children carrying stories of friendship between peoples. This is how peace grows strong. Your children will be bridges between two worlds, helping others understand that differences need not mean enemies. As Kate settled her family for their last night in the village, she reflected on the extraordinary transformation they had all undergone during their stay. They had arrived broken and desperate, with little hope for the future. They would leave, strong and confident, equipped not only with a reliable wagon and adequate supplies, but with knowledge and wisdom that would serve them for the rest of their lives. More importantly, they had learned that the world contained far more kindness than cruelty, if one had the courage to trust in the fundamental goodness of humanity. Chief Running Bear and his people had demonstrated that compassion knew no boundaries of race or culture, and that helping others was often the surest way to help oneself. Baby William slept peacefully in his new carrier, his recovery complete and his future bright with possibility. Around him, his siblings dreamed of new friends and new adventures, their fears replaced by excitement about the life that awaited them in Colorado territory. Kate held her youngest son close and whispered a prayer of gratitude for the unexpected blessings that had emerged from what had seemed like certain disaster. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them with strength they had not possessed before finding sanctuary in Chief Running Bear's village. The experience had taught her that hope was never truly lost, even in the darkest moments. Sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected sources, and sometimes the greatest. Gifts were found in places where logic suggested only danger existed. As sleep finally claimed her, Kate Harper knew that regardless of what difficulties lay ahead, her family would never again face them alone. They carried with them the love and wisdom of people who had chosen to see strangers as family, and that knowledge would sustain them through whatever trials the future might bring. The morning of departure arrived too soon, bringing with it a mixture of excitement and sorrow that left everyone in the village feeling unsettled. Kate woke to find her children already stirring, their faces reflecting the same conflicted emotions she felt in her own heart. They were eager to continue their journey toward the new life that awaited them, but reluctant to leave the safety and friendship they had found in this place. Chief Running Bear appeared at their tipi as the family finished their morning meal, accompanied by 6 of his finest warriors who would serve as their escort to Willow Creek Crossing. The men were armed and painted for travel, their horses prancing with anticipation for the journey ahead. "Today we begin the final stage of your passage to the new land," the chief announced in his formal English. "My warriors will see you safely to the soldier chief, and then your path forward will be protected by the power of your own people." Kate felt a surge of emotion as she looked at these men who were prepared to risk their lives to ensure her family's safety. The escort was more than just practical protection. It was a symbol of the bond that had been forged between her family and Chief Running Bear's people. Gray Wolf presented her with a final gift, a beautifully crafted toolbox containing everything needed for wagon maintenance and repair. Each tool had been selected with care and showed the attention to detail that characterized all of his work. "He says that a wagon is only as reliable as the knowledge of the person who maintains it," Daniel translated as the old craftsman spoke earnestly to Kate. "These tools will serve your family for many years if they are used with respect and proper understanding." As the final preparations were completed and the wagon loaded with supplies for the journey ahead, Kate found herself surrounded by village women offering last-minute advice and farewell embraces. Singing Crane pressed a final packet of medicine into her hands, while Gentle Rain whispered words of encouragement that needed no translation. The moment of departure arrived with a suddenness that left everyone feeling unprepared. Kate helped her children into the wagon, each of them clutching gifts and mementos from their Lakota friends. The village gathered to see them off, creating a sea of faces that ranged from solemn to smiling, but all reflecting genuine affection for the family that was leaving their protection. Chief Running Bear approached the wagon for a final farewell, his expression dignified, but warm as he looked up at Kate holding baby William. He spoke at length in Lakota, his words carrying the weight of formal blessing and personal friendship. "He gives you the blessing of safe travel and prosperous settlement," Daniel translated with obvious emotion. He asks the Great Spirit to watch over your family and to guide your steps toward happiness in your new home. And he says that you will always have a place in this village if you ever wish to return. Kate felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to respond adequately to such profound kindness. Please tell Chief Running Bear that he and all his people will live forever in our hearts. We will never forget the lesson of compassion you have taught us, and we will do our best to pass that lesson on to others. The chief nodded solemnly, then stepped back and raised his hand in a gesture that was both farewell and blessing. Around him, the entire village echoed the salute, creating a moment of ceremony that elevated their departure beyond simple leave-taking to something approaching the sacred. Kate raised her own hand in response, then took up the reins and guided their rebuilt wagon away from the village that had saved their lives and restored their faith in humanity. Behind them, the Lakota escort fell into formation, while ahead lay the trail that would take them to their rendezvous with the cavalry and the final stage of their journey to a new life. As the village disappeared behind the rolling hills, Kate allowed herself one last look back at the place where miracles had happened and strangers had become family. Then she turned her face toward the horizon and the future that awaited them, carrying with her the knowledge that they were no longer traveling alone, but accompanied by the love and prayers of people who had chosen to see past differences to the common humanity that connected all hearts. The journey to Willow Creek Crossing took 2 days through terrain that tested every improvement Gray Wolf had made to their wagon. Rocky hills gave way to steep valleys carved by ancient streams, while autumn winds carried the promise of winter in their sharp bite. Kate Harper drove the rebuilt wagon with confidence she had never felt before, knowing that Chief Running Bear's warriors rode in protective formation around her family. Daniel Crow Feather had volunteered to accompany the escort, serving as translator and guide for the final leg of their passage to safety. His presence provided comfort not only to Kate, but to her children, who had grown to trust his gentle wisdom and patient explanations of the world they were traveling through. On the second morning, as they crested a hill overlooking the creek crossing, Kate saw the unmistakable sight of blue uniforms gathered around a military camp. Captain Morrison had arrived as promised, his 12 cavalrymen arranged in the precise formations that marked professional soldiers. The sight filled Kate with relief and gratitude that nearly overwhelmed her composure. Chief Running Bear's warriors halted at the top of the hill, allowing Kate to proceed alone to the meeting point below. The symbolism was clear and intentional. The Lakota escort would deliver her family safely to the protection of her own people, but they would not venture into potential conflict by approaching the military camp directly. Captain Morrison rode out to meet the wagon as it descended toward the creek, his weathered face breaking into a smile of recognition as he drew closer. Kate remembered him from Independence, where he had spoken briefly with Thomas about trail conditions and military protection for civilian travelers. "Mrs. Harper," the captain called out as he approached, "I am deeply sorry for your loss. Your husband was a good man who spoke of his family with obvious love and pride. I am honored to help you complete the journey he began." Kate felt tears sting her eyes at the captain's words. Even here, in this remote wilderness, Thomas's reputation for decency had opened doors for his family. She could almost feel her husband's presence in the autumn air, as if he were watching over their progress toward the life he had envisioned. "Captain Morrison," she replied with as much composure as she could manage, "I cannot express how grateful we are for your assistance. The trail has been more challenging than we anticipated, but we are determined to reach the Colorado settlement." The captain's expression grew serious as he examined her family and their obviously rebuilt wagon. "I heard reports about your encounter with the Lakota village. Some of my men were concerned about your safety among the Indians, but I can see they treated you well." Kate chose her words carefully, knowing that her response might influence how other travelers would be treated if they found themselves in similar circumstances. Chief Running Bear and his people saved our lives, Captain. They repaired our wagon, healed our sick baby, and protected us from hostile raiders. We could not have asked for more generous treatment from our own relatives. Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully, his experienced eyes taking in the quality of the wagon repairs and the healthy appearance of her children. That speaks well of both their character and your judgment, Mrs. Harper. Not all encounters between settlers and Indian tribes end so favorably. The transfer of protection proceeded with military efficiency and frontier courtesy. Captain Morrison's men inspected the wagon and supplies, ensuring everything was secure for mountain travel. They provided additional ammunition and emergency rations, along with detailed maps showing the safest routes through the high passes. As the preparations were completed, Kate looked back toward the hill where Chief Running Bear's warriors waited in patient formation. Daniel Crowfeather rode down to the creek for a final farewell, his young face showing the same mixture of sadness and hope that Kate felt in her own heart. "My father sends his blessing for the final stage of your journey," Daniel said as he approached the wagon. "He wants you to know that you and your children will always be welcome in our village, no matter how many seasons pass." Kate dismounted from the wagon seat and embraced the young man who had served as bridge between two worlds during her family's time of greatest need. "Please tell your father that we will carry his wisdom with us always. Someday, when we are settled and prosperous, we hope to repay his kindness by helping other travelers who find themselves in desperate circumstances." Daniel smiled at her words. "He would be pleased to know that his example will live on in your actions. That is the true measure of a chief's influence, not the number of warriors who follow him, but the number of hearts he touches with wisdom and compassion." As Daniel rode back up the hill to rejoin the Lakota escort, Kate felt the finality of the moment settling over her. The protection and friendship of Chief Running Bear's people had carried her family through their darkest hour, but now they must continue their journey under different guardianship toward an uncertain future. Captain Morrison's cavalry moved with professional competence that contrasted sharply with the organic community spirit Kate had experienced in the village. The soldiers were courteous and helpful, but their primary focus remained on mission completion rather than personal connection. Kate found herself missing the warmth and intimacy of relationships that had developed naturally among Chief Running Bear's people. The trail through the mountain passes proved as challenging as anyone had predicted. Steep grades tested the rebuilt wagon's reinforced structure, while rapidly changing weather patterns demanded constant vigilance and adaptation. But Gray Wolf's craftsmanship held true, and the wagon that had once seemed fragile now proved capable of handling whatever the terrain demanded. During the long days of travel, Kate found herself in conversation with Captain Morrison about the changing relationship between settlers and Indian tribes. The captain's perspective, shaped by years of frontier military service, provided insights into the broader conflicts that were reshaping the American West. Men like Chief Running Bear represent the best hope for peaceful coexistence, the captain observed during one evening's camp. He understands that cooperation serves everyone's interests better than constant warfare. But unfortunately, there are extremists on both sides who prefer conflict to compromise. Kate thought about the Crow raiders who had threatened her family, and about wagon train leaders who viewed all Indians as enemies to be avoided or destroyed. What can ordinary people do to encourage peace instead of conflict? Captain Morrison considered the question carefully before responding. "Tell your story, Mrs. Harper. Let people know that kindness and understanding can bridge any divide, when both sides are willing to try. Your experience with Chief Running Bear's village proves that cooperation is possible if people approach each other with open hearts instead of closed minds." The final days of mountain travel brought them within sight of the Colorado Territory settlement that would become their new home. Kate stood on the wagon seat and gazed across the valley below, seeing neat rows of cabins, cultivated fields, and the church spire that marked the center of community life. After months of uncertainty and danger, the sight of permanent civilization filled her with emotions too complex to name. Mary joined her mother on the wagon seat, her 15-year-old eyes bright with excitement and anticipation. "It looks peaceful, Mama, like a place where we could really build the life Papa wanted for us." Kate nodded, though she found herself wondering whether the people in that settlement would prove as welcoming as Chief Running Bear's village. The true test of their journey would come not in reaching their destination, but in finding acceptance and opportunity within the community they hoped to join. Captain Morrison rode alongside the wagon as they descended into the valley, his expression satisfied as he completed his mission of safe escort. "The settlement has grown considerably since I was last here. You should find everything you need to establish yourselves comfortably." As they entered the settlement's main street, Kate became aware of curious faces appearing in doorways and windows. Word of their arrival spread quickly through the small community, and soon a small crowd had gathered to welcome the newcomers. The reception was friendly but cautious, as settlers evaluated the family that sought to join their isolated community. Reverend Joseph Mills, the settlement's spiritual leader, stepped forward to offer formal welcome. His wife Eleanor stood beside him, her practical eyes already assessing the needs of a widow with 8 children. The Reverend's greeting was warm, but carried the weight of someone accustomed to screening potential community members. "Mrs. Harper, we received word of your coming from the territorial authorities. I am sorry for the loss of your husband, but glad you have reached us safely." The settlement is always eager to welcome families committed to building something lasting in this wilderness. Kate accepted the welcome gratefully, though she sensed underlying questions about her family's ability to contribute meaningfully to community life. As a widow with limited resources and many dependents, she represented both opportunity and potential burden to the established residents. Eleanor Mills proved more immediately practical in her approach. "You'll need lodging while you decide on permanent arrangements. The Whitman family has offered space in their cabin until you can establish your own household." Over the following days, Kate began the complex process of integrating her family into settlement life. The community proved welcoming but demanding, expecting every adult to contribute skills and labor toward collective prosperity. Kate's experience managing a large family qualified her to help other mothers, while Mary's maturity made her valuable as a teacher for younger children. Samuel and Anna found their place among the settlement's youth, their experiences with Lakota children having taught them to adapt quickly to new social situations. James's newfound knowledge of woodworking, gained from Gray Wolf's patient instruction, made him sought after by craftsmen who appreciated his enthusiasm and willingness to learn. Lucy discovered that her gentle nature and natural empathy made her popular with families struggling to manage difficult children. Little Ruth charmed everyone with her innocent curiosity, while Benjamin's quiet strength reminded many settlers of the resilience required to succeed in frontier life. Baby William's robust health, restored by Singing Crane's medicine, served as testimony to Kate's ability to care for her family under challenging circumstances. The infant's bright eyes and ready smile endeared him to settlement women who understood the challenges of raising children in wilderness conditions. As autumn progressed toward winter, Kate found herself established as a respected member of the settlement community. Her house, built with assistance from neighbors, stood ready to shelter her family through the cold months ahead. The garden plot behind it showed promise for next spring's planting, while the small income she earned from teaching and midwifery provided security for basic needs. But Kate discovered that her experience in chief running Bear's Village had changed her expectations of what community could be. The Lakota approach to shared responsibility and mutual support contrasted sharply with the more individualistic culture of the white settlement. While neighbors helped each other when necessary, the deep interconnectedness she had witnessed among Chief Running Bear's people seemed absent here. Determined to bridge that gap, Kate began organizing initiatives that encouraged greater cooperation among settlement families. She established a system for sharing childcare responsibilities that allowed mothers to pursue other necessary work. She created informal networks for exchanging skills and resources that strengthened everyone's ability to thrive in the challenging environment. Most importantly, she began telling the story of her family's rescue by Chief Running Bear and his people. Around evening fires and Sunday gatherings, she shared the lessons she had learned about compassion transcending cultural boundaries. Her accounts challenged settlement residents to reconsider their assumptions about Indian tribes and the possibilities for peaceful coexistence. Eleanor Mills proved an unexpected ally in these efforts, her practical mind recognizing the value of adopting whatever strategies worked, regardless of their origin. If the Indians have found better ways to support their families and communities, we would be foolish not to learn from their example, she declared during one community meeting. The impact of Kate's advocacy became apparent when the first Indian traders approached the settlement that winter. Instead of fear and hostility, the residents responded with cautious but genuine interest in establishing peaceful trade relationships. Kate served as unofficial mediator, her experience with Chief Running Bear's people providing credibility that smoothed negotiations. Spring brought news that filled Kate's heart with unexpected joy. A message arrived through the network of traders and friendly tribes, carrying word that Chief Running Bear and his village remained safe and prosperous. The chief had sent specific greetings for Kate and her children, along with small gifts crafted by their friends in the village. Morning Star had woven a new dress for Lucy, while the village boys had carved wooden toys for Samuel and Benjamin. Singing Crane included packets of medicine with detailed instructions for their use, and Gentle Rain sent a beautifully decorated cradle board for baby William as he grew larger and more active. Most treasured of all was a message from Chief Running Bear himself, translated by Daniel Crow Feather and carried across hundreds of miles by willing messengers. The chief expressed satisfaction that Kate's family had successfully established themselves in their new home, and pleasure that their story was encouraging peaceful contact between communities. The seeds of understanding planted during your time with us have grown into strong trees, the message read. Your voice speaking for friendship between peoples helps our children imagine a future where differences are celebrated rather than feared. Kate shared the chief's message with the entire settlement during the Easter service, her voice steady despite the emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. The congregation listened with respectful attention, many hearing for the first time the full story of how Indian kindness had made their new neighbors' survival possible. Reverend Mills used the occasion to deliver a sermon about recognizing divine providence in unexpected forms, suggesting that Chief Running Bear had served as an instrument of God's mercy in Kate's family's darkest hour. The theological framework helped settlement residents accept and appreciate the profound generosity they had witnessed through Kate's testimony. As summer approached, Kate found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her family to this place of safety and opportunity. They had endured loss, faced mortal danger, and discovered unexpected salvation in the kindness of strangers who owed them nothing but chose to help anyway. Her children had grown and matured beyond their years, shaped by experiences that would influence their character for the rest of their lives. Mary had developed into a young woman of remarkable competence and compassion, while the younger children showed wisdom and resilience that spoke well for their future contributions to whatever communities they would eventually call home. Most significantly, Kate herself had discovered reserves of strength and leadership she had never suspected she possessed. The shy farmer's wife who had left Missouri had become a confident community organizer and advocate for justice and understanding. Her voice now carried weight in settlement decisions, and her example inspired other women to expand their own influence beyond traditional boundaries. On a warm June evening, as Kate sat on her porch watching her children play with settlement Friends in the fading light, she felt a profound sense of completion. The life Thomas had envisioned for his family had become reality, enriched by experiences and wisdom he could never have anticipated. The settlement thrived around them, strengthened by the lessons Kate had brought from her time with Chief Running. Bear's people. Trade relationships with peaceful tribes provided security and prosperity that benefited everyone. While the community's reputation for fairness attracted new families, seeking places where cooperation was valued over competition. Baby William took his first steps that summer, walking confidently across the cabin floor toward his mother's outstretched arms. In his bright eyes and ready smile, Kate saw the future her husband had dreamed of, children growing up free from fear, surrounded by community support, prepared to build something better than what they had inherited. As the sun set over the Colorado Territory settlement that had become their permanent home, Kate Harper offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. She thought of Chief Running Bear and his people, carrying their memory in her heart while building the future their kindness had made possible. The story that had begun with desperate flight from disaster had transformed into triumph over adversity, proving that courage, compassion, and community could overcome any challenge when people chose to face difficulties together rather than alone. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.